I'm François Vigneault, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with François Vigneault about the 2022 Montreal Comic Arts Festival. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. François is a freelance cartoonist, illustrator, designer, and teacher, not necessarily in that order, living in Montreal, Quebec. He's a creator of the graphic novel Titan, published in an updated English edition by Oni Press. Titan was originally published in French by Edition Pow Pow in 2017. He's also the co-creator of 13th E Avenue, a YA comic book series created with Geneviève Pedersen and published by Edition de la Pastique. François' comics and illustrations have appeared in publications such as Cavalier Ring, Planche, Paper Cutter, Kayak, and Study Group magazine. His work has been nominated for numerous awards, including the Joe Shuster Award and the Prix de Collage. His current project is Orcs in Space. François is a team member on the 2022 MCAF Programming Committee. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with François Vigneault about the 2022 Montreal Comic Arts Festival.
So, François Vigneault, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, John. Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started, I want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today?
Oh, gosh. Something I just finished about a month ago, but I just reread it because I was doing an interview with one of the authors, was this comic Soon by Thomas Cadden and Benjamin Adam. And it's a French comic, but it's been released in English by Europe Comics. And it was great. I highly recommend it to anyone listening. It's like a very intellectual but approachable science fiction about the kind of the course of events of the next 200 years or so. It's well worth a read.
Oh, sounds kind of heavy.
It's both. It is like occasionally depressing because it's kind of about like some bad turns of events that come up in the next 20, 30, 40 years. But then it also has a sort of utopian or positive streak to it because it's also about like the reactions to crises and things that happen. So I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Well, we're here talking about the Montreal Comic Arts Festival, and I understand that you're involved in the programming for this year, setting up panels, artist conversations. What if you could talk a wee bit about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I was very lucky. I've been doing some little volunteer work off and on for the Montreal Comic Arts Festival for a few years now. I do a lot of their translations from French to English, and every so often I do other little things for them. And this year they had a programming sort of committee or panel with me and a couple other creators and people who are involved in the arts in one way or another. And so we worked with some of the organizers to kind of help develop the theme for this year's festival, which will be the first festival in person in 2 years, which is going to be it's just going to feel great and be great to see people again for the first time in 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So what would be some of the highlights, though, that you are thinking about as you were setting this up? What sort of major topics will be there?
Oh, well, I mean, the theme in general is in French, it's tisser des liens. And in English, it's making connections. So it's basically the same idea, but in two different kind of vernacular, which is appropriate for the festival since the festival is a bilingual festival. And I think it's a very appropriate theme for this year because it's all about like reconnecting people. We have a lot of interesting sort of interactive panels and events that are kind of like connected with that. And I think that one of the biggest things is just that we set up. And I'm actually kind of proud of this because I had a little bit of a hand in helping to move us in this direction for the festival. But we set up a lot of conversations between artists, which I think is a really interesting way to approach the event. We have like a lot of the classic roundtable discussions and panels and things like that. But I really like it sometimes when you limit it down to just two artists and the interesting connections between their work. And so we have a bunch of panels that are just these conversations between two artists and the ways in which their there's sometimes interesting reflections or rhymes between their work, and I think that that's going to be really great. And of course, I think it works really well with the theme of making connections. So we have some really cool ones. We've got like the cartoonist Cab, along with Michel Rabagliati, who created Paul.
That's pretty cool.
I may mispronounce her name, and I apologize to her for that, but Shageya Mazami and Marco Rudi, who are two new artists to Montreal, who I think that's going to be really, really fun. Marco is one of the nominees for the Prix Bédelis Independent this year on the Anglophone side. And then the conversation that I think I'm probably the most excited about is the conversation with Julie Doucet and Jessica Campbell, which I think is going to be really, really fun as well. You know, Julie just came off of winning the Grand Prix d'Angoulême, and I think that there's a newfound attention to her work. And she's always been like a really special artist in the context of Montreal, the context of independent comic books, you know, because she was like started off in self-publishing, a little kind of comics fanzine, Dirty Plot. And it was published in English and French. She was part of the initial growth of Drawn and Quarterly. She's, you know, well read in France and here. And I think it's really, I'm really proud that we were able to get her to come. She doesn't do very many events, and she's going to do a special event here in Montreal. And I think that's going to be really, really cool.
Absolutely. You got some really high profile people, but it's not just hearing from folks who've been in the industry for a while, but it's also an opportunity for people who want to get started or have thinking about their own books as well, right? I think you've got some panels about getting started into the comic book business.
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's a lot. I mean, I think that that's one of the things that's the best about a comic book show, convention, festival, is that chance for up and coming new people to kind of, you know, I don't want to say like hear the wisdom of their elders, but, you know, like get a little bit of like, we've all been through the same sort of things. And making comics is sort of a lonely occupation. Sometimes you're just doing it on your own and you feel like you're in your little bubble and you're putting out into the void. And that's why I think it's so important to have those moments where you feel that connection with someone, you know, and it can be just as simple as being in a panel and having a panelist talk about like, their problems with the Xerox copier when they're trying to make their mini comic, right. or dealing with like how to like promote their book or something. It can be as simple as that, like the kind of inside business of it all. And there is actually going to be for those who are like quote unquote pros in the industry, you know, there's going to be a special day on Thursday that's going to have some sort of like, it's not going to be for the general public. It's going to be more for people who are already in the industry to some degree or another, you know, who are making comics or who are selling comics, editors and things like that. And that's going to be on the Thursday before the festival. So I don't have all the information about that programming yet because it's not like all out there. But that's definitely worth looking into. If there's up and coming creators, they might be interested in checking that out too.
Sure, absolutely. Now, in our sort of pre-conversation by email about this, you mentioned there will be some cool events. I'm wondering, can you give some hint about what those might be?
Well, I guess it depends on your definition of cool, right? I hope they'll be cool. I hope that they'll be fun. I mean, one of the biggest things is that there's going to be a bunch of expositions in and around the festival, you know, like art expos and things like that. And it's been a long time since we've had the chance to do those in person here in Montreal. You know, we've been locked down for 2 years, and we've done a lot of great hybrid stuff in the last years and digital things and things like that. But there's something that's really fun about like actually going to an art show, for instance, right? One I was pretty well involved with was called Vicoli e Ruelle, and that means alleys, basically alleys in Italian and alleys in French. And it was a really cool, or at least I call it cool, art show that was all about the urban experience and like how that's viewed in comic books, and that specifically in Quebecois comic books and in comics from Italy. And so there was 12 artists from Quebec, and that all touch on like street life in the alley, the urban architecture, all that sort of stuff that goes into our everyday existence in the city. And then all 12 Italian artists. And then I'm not one of the artists who's featured in the exhibit, but here in Montreal, I had the privilege of I did all the decorations on the walls, so it was kind of cool. Like I did all these drawings of like alley stuff, you know, like everything from signs to a manhole cover to a hopscotch game to cats to squirrels to clothes hanging on a clothesline. And then we blew those up, and they're all like kind of in the background of this art show. So
right.
I think that was, I would recommend that people check that one out. And then there's a bunch of other really cool festival exhibits. There's an exhibit that's going to be going on during the festival about the recently deceased artist Henriette Valium, who is just a kind of a legend here in Montreal and the Québécois art scene. He definitely created like the underground comic scene, and he's a really, really wild artist, and definitely worth checking out that show also. That one's going to be really, really cool. I think it's going to be cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this year, from my understanding, is that the event has typically taken place in a park, but this year it's somewhere different, right?
Yeah, this is going to be the first year on Saint Denis Street, which is like one of the principal classic Montreal streets. That street has actually had all kinds of work done on it in the last couple of years. They made this big special bike lane on the street, and so the street had like a lot, like it was under construction for like several years, and now it's back and it looks really great. It's really beautiful, and the stores are coming back, and after 2 years of lockdown and everything, I think everyone from the comics community, from the public, from all the shop owners, the SDC, the Saint Denis, which is like the kind of the Better Business Bureau, the community organization that helps run it. They're all really excited. And so I think it's going to be really cool. I love Festival in the Park. I thought it was a wonderfully, it's like a very tranquil and wonderful place to be. But being on Saint Denis Street, there's a real heritage and tradition of doing these great street festivals in Montreal. And they caught my eye when I first moved here 7 years ago. I remember I was really blown away. I lived a couple blocks away from Saint Laurent Street, where they did the Mural Festival, which is all about street art and graffiti and mural painting. And I was just blown away by like how that, like, there's something about, I love it when they close down the street to car traffic and people get to walk around and enjoy themselves. And I think it brings out the best in the community. And I can't wait to see what happens by mixing that just like happiness that people have of getting to walk around in the middle of the street, right? And not getting run over by a car.
Oh, yeah.
Along with the fun of having all the comics and everything. I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You said you've been there to many conventions and festivals in the past. Do you have any favorite moments that you can share?
Oh man, I've done all sorts of different festivals. I think I'll give a little shout out to a festival that I ran, that I founded, which it lasted for 3 years. That's about as much as we wanted to do, because it's a lot of work to put on a festival. And I tip my hat to everyone who does it. But me and a couple friends, we ran a festival in Portland, Oregon called Linework Northwest. I think maybe it's because I've been a little bit more involved with the Montreal Comic Arts Festival this year. I've been thinking more and more to the time when I was doing that, which was, it wasn't that long ago, but it was maybe, like eight years ago, almost 10 years ago now. And I have all these fond memories of how fun it is to bring together the community. So number one, that was a fun festival. And number two, I hope that more people in all kinds of different communities have the idea of maybe starting up some sort of festival, some sort of event, I think it's a really cool way to bring people in the comic arts together, to bring the fans and the readers in together with the artists. And I guess my this vague memory of how fun it was to run a festival, even though it was a lot of work, it doesn't inspire me to maybe I hope it inspires some people, like when they go to a festival and they have a good time, that they realize that they themselves could do something sort of similar, and it can be on a very small scale. You could just have a few people, a few artists in your small town or something like that. There's a really cool DIY element to festivals. I think people would be surprised by how much of it just comes from being passionate and trying out new things. And a lot of times without much support, a lot of volunteers are doing it, and they're just trying to make it all happen. And then eventually that grows. So I recommend that anyone who's a fan of comics, who loves the art form, they maybe think about like ways that they can engage with either creating a new thing or being a volunteer at a festival. Like, of course, the Montreal Comic Arts Festival is always looking for volunteers. So if anyone is hearing this and is interested, there's room to grow with it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of people to run it. Absolutely, that's for sure.
You know it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I was reading that you'll be doing a panel at the Montreal Comic Arts Festival. I wonder if you could give us just a sneak peek of your discussion.
Oh yeah, well absolutely. Well, I'm going to be running a couple panels. Like I'll be moderating them. So I'll be I'll be the person asking the questions, which is always fun. I'm doing a couple. I'm doing one on, actually it kind of coincides with the Vicole et Ruelle art show. I'm doing one on city life and cities in comics, and I think that that's going to be just a really cool event. And I think that that's something that I'm often inspired by, like that feeling of the vibrant living city in comics, be it from, everything from Metropolis, where Superman lives, to, comics like Paul that are like dealing with real life, everyday stuff in real cities. So I think that that's going to be really cool. And then I'm doing another panel that I'm moderating, and it's going to be all about the art of adaptation in comics. Oh. And I think that that's going to be really interesting as well. I recently started a podcast, or actually it's about to start, it hasn't started yet, called Apples to Giraffes, which is all about that art of adaptation, like books being turned into movies, or movies being turned into graphic novels, or that kind of back and forth between the different art forms. And the more I think about it, it just started off, it was like a fun little podcast. We were chatting about different things. And the more and more I think about it, the more I think it's a sort of fascinating subject, the ways that we can change a story from one art form to the other. So we're going to be exploring specifically the ways that we bring stories into graphic novels, for instance, like a story like 1984 or something like that. And then also I'll probably do a little bit of pushback, and we'll talk a little bit about the ways that graphic novels can turn into other art forms as well. I think that that's going to be really, really pretty enjoyable too. I always like doing those discussions with and hearing from the artists who are always so intelligent about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. The conversation is great for sure. Now, we talked previously about Orcs in Space. You've got a lot of projects on the go. I'm wondering, is there anything coming around the corner that you can talk about that's on your drawing table, so to speak?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, definitely the thing that is most on my drawing table right now is Orcs in Space still. I'm finishing the 3rd volume right now, and I'm slightly behind on my deadline, I'll tell you. And so that means I have to draw hard every day. I have to really try my best to keep up with it. And I think that that's partially because I've been really trying to put a lot of energy into this is the 3rd and for now the final volume of the book. So I really wanted to go out with a bang. So I've been putting a lot of energy into the book. And then after that, I don't know if I've talked to you about it before, but I'm working on my next graphic novel, which will be my next solo effort, where I write and draw and do everything. And that's called Blue Moon. And I think that that's going to be in the next couple of years. Would love for it to come out in 2023, but I'm not sure if that's realistic. And that's going to be like Titan, my previous book. It's going to be science fiction, set sometime in the near future, a little bit of things talking about class conflict and things like that, but with more of a horror thriller twist compared to the way the story was told in Titan. So it's going to be more on the thriller tip.
Interesting. Okay. Something to look forward to, that's for sure. Now, we've been talking about the Montreal Comic Arts Festival. I'm wondering, do you have plans to attend any other events later this year?
It's looking like I'll probably be at TCAF this year, although I won't be exhibiting, but I think I'm going to be there in the city of Toronto and visiting with people and getting and seeing what that festival's like also after a long absence. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's the only thing that's currently on my books. I'd be very open to doing other stuff, but so many events have been like up in the air that we'll see. But I think that the next thing that people will see my face at will be at TCAF, and if they see me there, I'd love if they said hi because it's been too long.
Absolutely, no, it's great to get out and see people for sure. So with all that you've got on the go, I'm wondering, do you have a website where people can go and find out about your current and your future plans?
I do, of course. Yes. It's my name, François-Vigneault.com, and I'll spell that since it's one of these funny French names. FRANCOIS-VIGNEAULT. And on Instagram, I'm findable. It's all my name, all one word.
Great. Well, Francois, those are all the questions I have, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Always a good question. Always a good one to end with. I think the main thing is I hope anyone who is hearing this in this great comic community that we have in Canada, if you're going to be anywhere around Montreal when the festival happens, I hope you'll attend because I speak as a creator, as a fan, and as someone who helps them to a degree with what's going on. It's really a fun event, and I hope that, I think it's a great way to connect, to reconnect, to kind of sometimes also even cross like some linguistic and cultural divides that we sometimes have in the country. I think comics are a great way to broaden your horizons, to learn new things, meet new artists, learn new languages. I know it's been a big thing in me learning French and learning all about this this community and this country that I live in now. So I hope that people will be able to make it out. And if not, we'll see you next time.
Thanks to François for the chat. You can discover more about François on Instagram at François Vigneault. That's FrancoisVigneault. And online at François-Vigneault.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. And please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.